Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and the Demons sit atop the AFL ladder for the 12th week in 2021, and the minor premiership is in reach, and will come down to a win or a draw in our final match against Geelong. Joining me tonight is longtime Demonlander George. Good evening, George.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, Demonlanders. Well, we've got one round to go. How close are we going to get to the ultimate success? Perhaps we'll find out tonight.
Yes, let's try and find out. I don't think, given my predictions in the past few weeks, and particularly after the bye, I don't think we will find anything out tonight. But helping us to find nothing out tonight is other co-host Binman. Good evening, Binman.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, George. Good evening, Demonlanders. I wouldn't be so hard on yourself there, Andy. I mean, in that myriad of predictions, I'm sure if we played it back, we could find something correct in there.
No, absolutely not. I did not factor in the Bulldogs dropping games that you would have thought they would have won. Geelong lost a game. I thought they would have won. GWS have been a bit of a surprise packet. I didn't sort of expect them. I'm actually a little bit worried about them, as in the teams that are in the bottom part of the 8. They're one I don't want to come up against.
Well, that's because, Andy, you drank the Kool-Aid and forgot that it's just complete rubbish that good teams don't lose to the lower sides, as Melbourne was copping during, predictably copping when Collingwood beat us and drew to Hawthorn. And, it's just, so I'd like to bookmark it for next season when it comes up again and we get beaten by a bottom side, to that sort of annual amnesia that there's one of the biggest myths in football, that the good sides don't get beaten by bottom sides. It's a complete and utter nonsense.
Speaking of bottom sides, and before we get into the meat and potatoes of the match, were you at all worried at any stage in the game that we wouldn't be able to shrug the Crows off? There were a few times that we were challenged, and thankfully we were able to rise to those challenges, eventually running away with it and winning comfortably. But do you have any concerns that we were once again challenged by a bottom team? I'm sure, B-Man, you don't have concerns, but let's hear it anyway.
No, is the short answer. I mean, it was actually sort of an interesting match from that perspective. I was perhaps it was coming off watching the Olympics, but the sort of rowing came to mind. And I'm not a rower, so I forget what they call it. But when they have a rhythm and they sort of stick to a rhythm, and we look like we were in it and we weren't really going hard, sort of like in a semi before the final. But when we need to, we up our rating and we get going, and there's not too many other teams that can go with us when we do. And we seem to have the ability to up the rating when we need to. And when we did get challenged, it seemed like, we sort of increased the rating and we got on top and got that swarm happening, and then click back a gear in, we've got bigger things to come. So no is the short answer.
George, any worries from your end?
No, similarly to Binman, although they got back to within 3 points in the third quarter, I think it was, we still had control of the game, and it, as Binman said, the rating just went up. Max Gawn decided that he'd had enough and just blew them away in the middle with his rucking. Adelaide played the same way as they did the previous week against Port, and in a typical bottom of the ladder type team. Strategy was just to scrap and try and keep themselves in the game for as long as possible, and hope that jag a couple of lucky goals at the right time and you can cause an upset. But that wasn't going to happen on a good day on the MCG. You might get away with it on a small ground or on a wet night or something like that. But no, we were in control of that game at all times. And as Binman said, we just put the accelerator down when we needed to and just blew them away in the end.
I thought fair credit to the Crows that they played well and they played with good energy, and they wasn't as intense a game as the first time we played them. So. But they were pretty attacking with their handball in that game, and they used the corridor a bit and were prepared to take us on, and as we were with them. But it really does show the problem for that model is when we did up our rating and we did start sort of just increasing our pressure a bit, those handballs broke down, didn't they? So like you can get through they got a lot of their scoring through those sorts of neat chains of 2-3 handballs out in the space and running ahead of the ball, and it looks great when it comes off. And all credit to them, they did that pretty well. But they, if you put enough pressure on it, and often those chains break down, and that's what happened in that sort of burst in the third quarter where we put the game out of question the second half of the third quarter.
That's where that's what worries me a little bit, because that seems to be the way that teams sort of get through our defences. We've got a fantastic defence, but when you have that quick chains of handballs, it's sort of hard to get set up, particularly if it's quickly off a turnover. And this was against a bottom team. If we get some of the better teams sort of doing that against us, and whether they'll adjust their tactics just to sort of negate us, I don't know if they will. But if they do, that's sort of a bit of a blueprint of getting through our web-like defence.
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, that's really, it's interesting watching them because they've got a very similar game plan to a way of playing to the Dogs, because that's the Dogs' MO, is trying to move it like that. But I still maintain the challenge for that model is that in high pressure games, it's not just the pressure that we can apply, it's also the pressure of the moment. Because if you're trying to move the ball through 6 or 7 handballs to move it forward, each one of them has to hit a target, and each one of them provide an opportunity to turn the ball over. And you up the pressure to a certain level, and that suddenly becomes a lot more difficult. I mean, the difference to, say, Richmond and Melbourne's model is we do something similar, but it's all about sweeping the ball forward. And if we lose possession, it's often on the boundary line. So as we've talked about before, it gets an opportunity to create a stoppage. But, we're pushing it forward as opposed to relying on each of those handballs to click, because we saw against Adelaide, when it breaks down, all of their players are running forward of the ball, and it creates a huge hole behind the ball, and we can hurt on the turnover. We don't get hurt on the turnover very often when we lose those handball chains.
If you'd like to join the show and talk about anything we're going to talk about tonight, 039016 3666, 039016 3666, or Skype us at Demonland31. Bayley Fritsch, after a quiet first term in which I don't believe he touched the ball, Bayley Fritsch kicked a bag of goals, ending with 7, and 3 of those, remarkably, were in the last 90 seconds of the match. And Bayley's is the leading small to medium forward in goal kicking this year. He's ahead of Charlie Cameron and Toby Green and guys like Papley and Tippin Woody. Now, look, those guys are obviously a lot shorter than him, but I sort of class Bayley in that. I wouldn't class him with the McKays and the Hawkins and the Walkers, who are all very big-bodied, and Dixon, traditional full forwards. Bailey's a bit shorter than that, and given his frame, I'm putting him in that medium to small range. So fantastic effort from Bayley this year. Really happy with him. It seemed like as well, when the pressure's off a little bit, he can kick very, very straight, because we've seen him miss a few easy ones this year. So let's hope he can continue that way, George.
Yeah, his kicking certainly much more reliable at the correct end of the season than what it was perhaps earlier on. Just 7 zip was just fantastic. And I think the big factor with Bayley this week in particular, don't underestimate the effect of Ben Brown on the side. Last week we had Melcham kick 2 and A and B kick 2. It's when Ben Brown's come in and he just takes away and creates a space in which these players can operate. He runs very traditional but wide-ranging forward-leading patterns, leaves plenty of space behind him, and the opportunities are there. We saw plenty of times that Bayley was almost all on his own, taking a mark easily out in front of his opponent. It's because he's got space to run into. So it's great that he kicked straight. He was very confident, and it was fantastic for everyone to see. He's also become very consistent. While you discount his ilk against people like McKay and Hawkins. He's only 4 goals behind Hawkins in the goal kicking for the whole year. So that's a remarkable outcome as far as Melbourne's concerned. So yeah, big plus for Bayley, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks we'll see a lot more of him. But I can assure you, when you come into the pointy end of the season, that other clubs won't let him off the leash as much as perhaps he was let off on the weekend. I
must say, I was saying that he was fairly inaccurate early on, but when I look at the stats, that's not totally true. He's kicked 46 goals, 18 this year. It's his best year. The previous year, 22-24. Previous year before that, 2016, and before that, 17-12. Clearly his best year. He's only not scored in 3 games this year, and he's kicked multiple goals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 times this year out of the 22 games that he's played. So a fantastic effort from Bayley Fritsch this year. You have to say, big man.
Yeah, terrific. And one of the things amongst many of going to the missing going to the footy is going with mates and being able to share my pearls of wisdom at quarter time, because if I had had a mate next to me on the couch, I would have turned to him and said at the end of the first quarter, he's the sort of player who can go a quarter without touching it, because the position he plays is, like you say, it's that medium forward's a tricky position to play. Because it's somewhat dependent on what happens up the ground, and you can play well and not get near it. But that he's someone who can turn it on. And then I would have been able to turn to my friend at the end of the game and said, that's what I mean, because he took his chances. I thought he's a really natural footballer. We've talked about that, a few of our players. I love the way he uses his body in the marking contests. He reads the ball beautifully in flight. He's a great field kick. And I have to say, pressure around the ground, he had a couple of tackles, and he's getting up the ground and applying pressure a lot better. I think he's really upped his pressure in that forward half as well. And, he's very easy to sort of miss. Very easy to sort of not think about how important he is to our structure. And George is right in terms of the challenge for other teams. Sure, they'll put time into him, but if we've got McDonald in that team as well, and Brown, and you've got a firing Cozzy, who they tag pretty hard in this game, how many defenders have you got? And, you can't then zone off. If you put a tight tag on him, you can't use that player to zone off. So that creates an imbalance in your defensive zone. So particularly if if you have to put someone on Brown and not really run off him. So he's been important all season, and it was wonderful to see him kick so accurately.
I think I skipped over one of my points I wanted to talk about. We didn't talk about Seedsman yet, did we?
No.
He gave us a bit of a headache early on. It didn't seem like we were putting anyone on him. Do you think that was a mistake, particularly when he was sort of heading towards having 60 possessions, as the commentators like to say, despite the fact that we all thought that wouldn't happen, probably in the end. But, big man, would you put more time into that type of play? Sorry,
that reminded me a bit of the first time we played the Hawks, where Mitchell was getting a lot of the ball. Is that, he's an excellent player. He was getting lots of the ball, but how many of them were damaging? I mean, we were keeping them relatively tight. So it sort of comes to that decision a bit like the decision whether you put a hard tag on someone like a Fritsch. You do that, then you take one of your players out of the sort of rotation of being aggressive, I guess. It becomes a bit of a balance. How much do they give him? They gave, for instance, McRae similarly heaps of, he had 35 or 36 possessions in that game. So, a lot of McRae's, a lot of Seedsman, the kicks are out the back of the contest. So by that, on the defensive side of the contest. So, the ones that are really dangerous players are the ones who get their disposals in front of the contest, like Oliver does when he's running through it and into space in front of the contest. So, I think strategically they were okay to give him a lot of those possessions. He's a terrific player, isn't he? I'd love him at the D's. He's such a fantastic kick, and he weights the ball. But I don't know whether, George, do you think we put some on him because he's certainly his possessions. He ended up with only mid-30s, I think, and he was only. He was on track though, as you say, to get 40-odd possessions.
But he went to the wing. Did he go to the wing, George, later with Langdon's wing?
From my observation, he and Langdon were playing on the same wing the whole time. Seedsman played a lot, as Binman's pointed out, off the back of the pack and was picking up a lot of possessions, which sent the commentators into overdrive in the first 15 minutes of the game. But a lot of them are those cheapies out the back. Now, the reality is I really enjoyed the competition between him and Langdon. It was almost like Langdon sort of said, okay, well, you've got bucket loads of possessions. Now you're going to see what I've got to offer. And I think that was what the change was. And as Binman's just said, it's about the effects. So it was great. You've got two wingmen, you sort of got to go back to the 70s almost to see this sort of competition. Robbie Flower versus, who was the North Melbourne wingman? I can't remember.
Keith Gregg.
Neither of them on each other almost, but 65. Yeah. In this game, there was 65 possessions between these two players, and but it was the effect. It was the effectiveness is what was critical. For example, Langdon had 7 intercepts. Seedsman only had 4. Langdon had 7 marks. Seedsman only had 3. Langdon had 7 tackles, Seedsman only 3. Score involvements, Langdon had 7 and Seedsman had 10. But sort of the thing is, it's what you're doing with your possessions and how effective and how you're matching in with the rest of the team. So while it looks impressive getting 30 plus possessions on the wing, it's what you do with them is the critical thing, and that's been a common factor through everything we do with this side this year. We don't worry about clearances out of the centre. It's about how effective they are. So Seedsman can run riot during the game, and the commentators, like I said, can wet their pants and get excited about him. But it's what effect does that have on the game? And at the end of the game, Adelaide lost by 41 points.
And that's exactly right. They would have been where they would have been worried is those score involvements. That's where he was damaging, and that's when he is getting in front of the ball. So I think they would have looked to. I'd be really interested to know what the split, first half to second half split of score involvements was, because they're the ones you don't want to give a player like Seedsman because he's such a good user of the ball. Having said that, they go to him all the time, so he's going to be involved in a lot of their scoring involvements just by default. But the other thing too is that, again, it would have been good for the commentators to point this out, is that we have 1 less at the stoppage. That means there's a free player at in the opposition at those round the ground stoppages. In which case it's him, but if he positions himself on the defensive side, otherwise we'll take him so that he's blocked he's got a man on the offensive side, on their offensive side of it. So essentially, if we happen to lose that possession, that contest, or the tap down, or it gets to him, he elects to set up on the defensive side, and that's what Mitchell did against us. He will often get the footy, and so he will rack up those possessions. That's the same with McRae. If you've got 1 less at the stoppage, someone has to be free. He wants to be they want to, because he's their best kick, he's probably arguably their best player, I reckon. They want to engineer it so he's free. And the way that they can do that is to put him have him set up at defensive side. So it's a bit of sure, he gets the ball, but he has to kick it past the ruckman and or go around it, or it's the score involvements that they would have been most sort of concerned about.
Well, while we're talking wingman, we'll jump to Ed Langdon, and it's welcome back to Ed Langdon. It's been quite evident from at least halfway through this year that the opposition teams have been attempting to avoid the Langdon wing. We've talked about this on the podcast. We've noticed a drop in output from Langdon, I think, ever since his concussion. But positive Lingers was back to some of his best form this week. What do you put that down to? Because Seedsman was there, they were using that wing as well, so therefore Langdon gets back into it.
In large part, if you looked at some of those sort of longer shots, one that, yes, they're right, they were clearly not trying to keep the ball away from him as other teams have, and so they were happy to play down that wing. But how much better he is running over the ground. And again, sort of without wanting to harp on it, the sort of loading issue definitely plays into it, because he's exactly the sort of player who's going to struggle with extra loads, because if he does so much running, if he loses a sort of even a tiny bit of his pace, his effectiveness is not nearly as effective, because he can't cover as much defensive ground. He can't get to as many contests. He's not able to run away from players. He's so good at running away from players when he's got the ball in hand and being able to get that last kick inside 50 or down the wing. And there was a great example where I don't think he actually got to the contest, but he sprinted. He must have sprinted for 150 metres. He came from miles back. He almost got to the Crows player who was coming down the wing. In that middle, period of the season, around 14, 15, he looked like he had, lead boots on. But now he's running back over the top of the ground. And, when he's like that, the opposition have to start thinking, well, do we have to go down the other side? Do we have to keep the ball away from him? The problem for Gus was that the ball was going on not the other wing. But, so for me, that's the main thing. He's really good at getting out in front and taking players on, isn't he, in terms of using that pace. So that when you have a combination of his endurance and you've got speed across the top of the ground, that's Langdon at his best.
Yeah, I thought Matthew Nix just went for the one-on-one in this particular case because Seedsman was so critical. And he might have seen Langdon sort of a little bit down on statistics in the last couple of weeks. He was a chance to try and exploit something. But the reality is that by using that wing, like I said before, it almost finished up like a 0-0 draw. It was fantastic to watch. But Langdon certainly better back to his best. I think what would have happened if they'd put Seedsman on the Brayshaw wing is that we would have moved Langdon over to the other side for exactly the same reasons, just create the one-on-one, typically similar sorts of players. But poor old Gus on the other side was just starved the whole game. I think he had 6 possessions or something like that, but it wasn't because he had a lousy game. It was just the ball never came down that side. And even as one of the commentators said, if the ball was on the non-MCC members' side, they would have been sending letters of complaint off to the club on Monday morning about making sure that the game was played in front of them, apart from the other side of the ground.
And just on that, using one side of the ground, it's like, example 4,672 of how the commentators drive me nuts. I mean, Eddie was commentating the whole game, and that's just too much for any person to bear. But the constant talk and the questions from Healy about why they're using one side of the ground, and what is that about? And they're coming up with theories like the shadow and the sun. I mean, Melbourne have been doing it every season. I mean, every game this season. Melbourne fans have been complaining about May kicking up that left-hand side, going the one side all the time. So I couldn't understand what they were talking about on that, because we use one side of the wing, one side of the ground. We hardly ever cross to the other side.
And the worst thing is a lot of these commentators and I said it last week, have commentated quite a few games for Melbourne. So they should know those basics.
I reckon too much footy. Those fellas have had too many hits back in the, the magnificent 80s or whatever that video was called.
Not sure what Eddie Maguire's excuse is, but he always seems to. I like to play a game of how quickly is Eddie going to mention Collingwood in some fashion or work Collingwood into it, and he got it in the first quarter this week. Max Gawn, I thought he was fantastic, particularly after half-time. He didn't quite have his marking mitts on. He dropped a few, and one of them reverberated throughout the MCG. I think it scared the pigeons completely off. But he only took the one, but he had a career-high 10 clearances, and the method of those clearances is something I've noticed a lot of in his recent game, and that's grabbing it out of the stoppages and booting the ball forward. Big man, what do you think of that technique? Have you noticed Max doing that a lot more? Has he always done that? Am I just noticing that now?
I think he is doing it more often now. He's also, in the last few weeks, he's been thumping it forward, much
Jeff
more
White style.
often, hasn't he? Yeah, really going. He would have been spewing at one stage. They called one back, which was funny in the context because often it's amazing ones they don't call back, and they called one back that he'd smashed outside of the square from the centre. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was like a kick.
He would have been spewing that was called back because it was as good as a kick. It literally outside the square by the time I got out there. So no, he has been doing that, but he's remarkably athletic. You talk about someone, how they always talk about how athletic Nui is, and of course we've got Jackson, who is is amazingly athletic for someone his size. But I'm amazed how athletic Gawn is. On the Demonland site, you've got the video of the week. Is a goal that he's involved in where Track ends up kicking it to Cozzy. It's just a fantastic bit of play from Gawn, and for a guy
and Jackson, both of the ruckman in there.
Yeah, he's like, what is he, 6'9" or something, 6'10" in the old, and for just how mobile he is and how good he is off his feet, around his feet, and picking it up off the ground. He's really come into his own, and really, given the workload he's had over the last, this last 2 years in particular, it's incredibly backs up every week. The time on ground, he had a pretty good chop out, didn't he? 50-odd%, I think. Did you have a look at that, George?
Time on ground percentage,
78% this week.
78%, right? Okay.
And played quite a bit in the forward line as well. They rested him.
Yeah, but I thought he. He's been in awesome form, and I forget which footy show, or it might have been the First Crack. They were talking about the advantage that gives Melbourne, the sort of advantage we've got over all of the other top contenders, say even down to Brisbane, is both obviously Jackson, but Gawn is so much better than any other of the rucks in the leading teams that it sort of gives us a massive advantage.
I'm thinking that Max has actually changed his way of playing because we now have a different forwards setup than what we did earlier in the year. With Brown in there as a serious big target, it's in our interest to get the ball into the forward line as quickly as possible. So we're seeing, like you said, Max taking the ball more out of the ruck and just putting it straight onto his boot, and he's getting good distance with it as well with these single kicks. But I'm seeing the same thing from Oliver as well. In particular, it's just get the ball and slam it forward as fast as you can, particularly from the centre bounce situation where you've only got the 6-6-6 in the opposition's back line, that they will struggle when the ball comes in high and quickly, because Brown's in there now where we didn't have him earlier in the year. So it's required a different sort of strategy to get the ball in. It's to our advantage to get it in there as quickly as possible. My only concern with Max was the marking. He only had one this week, and I think it was the same last week. But he had those 10 clearances, and in that third quarter, I think this was the real captain's quarter, the real captain's act, where they got back to that 3-point margin, and you just looked at Max's face in the centre square bounce, and he was as serious as you looked, and he just blew it away from there. Yeah. The game, Max had decided that was enough. No more mucking around. This is going to be it, and that's exactly what he did. Just got the ball out of there, ensured that we had the attacking moves, and that 3-point margin was suddenly out to 4 goals again by the end of the quarter. And we saw what happened in the last quarter when it eventually blew it all away. But yeah, he's a complete standout. I suspect his marking might not be totally sort of associated with not performing as well, but rather that Jackson's actually taking a lot of the roles that he used to have in the game, and he's giving Jackson a lot more on ruck time than previously, and Max has been sitting down the forward line much more. I don't know that that's any particular value, quite frankly, because although it does tend to move Brown up the ground a little bit more, but he's not playing the same sort of game as what he was earlier in the season, but he's still a lethal component to the way the team is playing.
And he's so far ahead of any other ruckman. It's just, there's no... is there a bigger lock in the AFL in terms of the All-Australian? I wouldn't think so. There's no, he's any debate about Grundy or Nat Nui or I mean, who else is there? That's
Goldstein, maybe.
Goldstein, yeah. I mean, he's at the end of his career, and no one's even close to Gawn as a ruck in terms of his influence. And I know we'll talk about Jackson next, but he's also a great student of rucking, Gawn, and I know he's a jokester, but I've heard him talk about rucking and ruck craft and who he admires and who he's looked at. He looks at lots of vision, and how awesome is it for Luke Jackson to learn his ruck craft under Gawn's tutelage.
Well, let's talk about Max's partner in crime. He continued his run of good form in the past few weeks. He's had 19 hitouts, 16 disposals and 2 goals. His athleticism is just astounding. His ability to follow up his own ruck work, hunt the ball and be involved in scoring change is a reason he's a favourite for the Rising Star Award. There was one piece of play I particularly liked where he sort of very basketball style. He thumped the ball over someone's head and picked it up and went with it. And his handballing is fantastic. He really can nail a player from distance, and loving his work. Big man. Yeah,
when I'll probably talk about him now, we were going to talk about sort of some of these under 22 players, but his handball, I looked at his stats for the season, and he's in the elite category for handballs. Which is, I think he's averaging nearly 8 handballs, 7.6 handballs a game, something like that. And he's really clever, isn't he, the way he handballs and gets it sort of out in front of players to run onto him. He's really, becoming quite important to the way we play. And I love the synergy on the field between him and Gawn. He, at one point, right near the end of the game, Gawn was in the forward pocket. Gawn was taking the ruck, and he turned to so it was just about to be thrown, and he turned to Jackson to point to him to get out of there, to go back to the sort of, I guess, into the sweeping zone.
If they get it out,
and just the way that they sort of wax together is terrific. And I was really fascinated at I think it was round 4 or 5 even, so ages ago. Gawn would said on RSN that they choose on field when it's time to swap. So there's not set times. I guess there's some. But I thought that's really fascinating because it provides a sort of flexible, organic response. I've said this a number of times, but one of the things about Jackson that allows Gawn to play in so many, tactically, it allows Gawn to play in different positions as he sees fit. But he's got such an incredible skill set. Before we started, I watched on the AFL Pro Vision his game, Jackson's game. It took me much longer because you see all of the hit-outs, and he had 19 hit-outs. So there's lots of vision of hit-outs. But, some of his work at the ground level and his ability to sort of pick the ball up. But, his handballing, it's funny you should mention his handballing because it was really evident watching, it was about 8 minutes of block of his vision of how creative his handball is. And in this game, how often he put players into space and created sort of opportunities for us to move the ball forward. And in the last 4 or 5 minutes, I think he had 5 score involvements. He set directly 2 of them up. He got the last goal came from him as well. One of them was that tap. I don't think that ended up in a score, actually. Should have. He's something different that other teams don't have. I think he's going to be extraordinarily important. I mean, what sort of player is he going to become when he becomes his marking's getting better, but he learns a bit of forward craft because he doesn't look a natural forward. He looks a natural ruckman in the sense that he's just in the game all the time. But what happens when he starts sort of regularly kicking goals? And that's the other thing. Right from the beginning, I thought he's had a neat way of kicking the footy and a good technique. And maybe it's been nerves that his inaccuracy previously, but he looks really economical in his run-up, only 2 or 3 steps. And his accuracy has been fantastic in the last couple of weeks.
He's contracted to 2020 to end of next year.
That's correct.
We have to lock him in there. I'm sure he's getting offers from Freo and West Coast, and I'm sure the lure to go back home particularly to a state and a city that's not under lockdown, that's got relative freedoms. It's going to be a big lure back to him in the short term, especially. But we've got to, I don't know, we've got to throw the checkbook at him. This maybe success will keep him here. I don't know. George?
Yeah, success, I think, is the answer to all that, Andy. He's part of a winning team at the moment, a winning culture. We remember how many good players from the East Coast, like Andrew Gaff is probably the classic example. He had plenty of offers to come back to Victoria, had family over here, but he wasn't going to come back while he was part of a successful team. And I think the same will apply for Luke Jackson. Once again, Binman spoke about the ability to handball. I think that comes from that basketball background where you've got to be able to put the ball to advantage in really tight, close situations and put it in the right spot, not just at the player, but in front of the player where they're going. So you've got to think, you've got to have the IQ to be able to know where's the best position, where to move after you've delivered the ball. He's just fantastic at that follow-up. He gets the ball off, but he's also then going 90 degrees away to create the next option to come back again, the old basketball give and go. But what I really loved was, again, the basketball background when he took that mark, that one-handed mark, where he just stuck the mitt out to the side and just wound it in. It was exactly what a basketball player would do. We're going to see some great stuff coming from Luke Jackson. I suspect the rising star is pretty well locked in after this round. I'm surprised that the people who were watching the game gave the nomination to Bowey on the game because Luke Jackson couldn't possibly get another one. But he's pretty well got that sewn up. I don't think there's anyone else who's going to come close after this game.
No, that's some really interesting points there, George, and that's a good point about that sort of basketball IQ, because you really got to always put the ball to everyone's moving all the time, aren't they, on the basketball court, and it's congested, obviously. So you can't pass to someone who's standing still unless you want to turn the ball over. But your point about him moving with the play is a really interesting one. On the vision, near the end of the game, there's a ruck contest that he's involved in. He took the centre ruck. And the ball, we sort of moved it forward to our half-back flank, and it was sort of rolling forward and hitting it forward. So we weren't, and you can, because I was watching AFL Pro Vision, and watching him, I was just tracking him in the contest, not watching the football. And he was following the play. He didn't have to move fast, but he was following the play about 20 metres away as the ball in the corridor, as the ball was sort of heading towards our goal. And ultimately, he was there to get a handball. I think Harms ended up handballing it to him, all because he had, I guess it's not that amazing, but so many players who are just flat-footed and they're standing and not sort of there for the next contest, not moving with the ball, exactly as you say, George. And as it turned out, they used him, and it set up one of our last couple of goals. So like you said, after I think it was last week's game or maybe the previous week, he loves being involved in the game, and so he wants to be where the footy is. But he's clever too. He's not just running around like a chook without his head. He's going to be a star of the game. And Gawn's so fit, I could see him playing another 4 or 5 years easily. I'm totally happy for Luke Jackson to go back to Western Australia after we've won our third flag, and he can take the big coin and retire over there. I've got a bone to pick with the AFL Stats Pro vision. They show quite a bit of footage before whatever the possession or whatever they're highlighting, but they then cut away from it almost as soon as the ball leaves the hand or foot. At least show a few seconds afterwards. Sometimes it takes about 3 minutes to get to the actual thing, and then they cut it as soon as the ball leaves the hand. Well, when you say they, I presume it's a bit of software that does it.
I think so, yeah.
You might have to talk to Dave. Sorry, Dave.
Well, software needs to be a bit more intelligent.
That's right. So that computer software could be a commentator in footy, probably with a lack of insight.
And it's a bit like the TAC Cup draft highlights. You only ever see good things. You don't see when someone's come running into the forward 50 and kicks the ball out of bounds on the full.
You do on the AFL Stats Pro. You see them all of the things. So if you want to, you can see every involvement they do, good and bad. Frees they give away, not the. Yeah, you see everything. Yeah,
I've always said my 3 minutes of highlights, I would look fantastic. You would love it. You'd want me in the team. Let's talk about backline. What did you think about the decision to rest, or in today's terms, manage Stephen May this week? And conversely, also, how did you rate Joel Smith's game, the replacing him, big man?
I wondered whether they'd been given warning that there was going to be a no pre-finals bye, in which case makes total sense. They should have. I'm all for resting at this stage once we've locked in top four in particular. Why take the risk if there was any soreness whatsoever? I don't know what the deal is. Whether I was of the mind that you're not allowed to do that once the game's, once they've selected the side. So I thought that was curious to make a late decision because...
Well, they don't have to say... They didn't say it was managed. They said some hamstring soreness or whatever. So
awareness.
It's technicality.
Well, if he needed a rep, why not? Like, he's so important to us and he plays such a physical game. He's going to come up, against the big defenders in the next few weeks. So why not? I really like... I was rapt that they brought Smith in. So I thought he might come in. When we had the podcast last week, we didn't know that Hunt was out at that stage, I don't think, did we?
I think we strongly suspected it, but it wasn't confirmed.
Well, we knew he was injured, I guess. And I hadn't thought, but sort of subsequently, I thought Smith was a good chance of coming in for Hunt because that's the role he's been playing at Casey. And, he's run and dash. And even though when he played last year in defence, he came in for OMAC last year and was playing basically a third lockdown tall. And that exposes his defensive sort of weaknesses, but in that, the player can run off players and attack like Hunt. I reckon that really plays to his strengths. I thought he was terrific in the first half. He had a sort of quieter second half. He was dynamic. He got beaten once by Himmelberg, but Himmelberg did his hammy in that one, I think. So I thought he was one of probably our best player in the first half, at least in the defensive zone. It's good that we've got him with a game under his belt. I wouldn't totally be shocked if he stays in. I mean, for me, it feels a bit like it's him or Hibberd. Assuming Hunt doesn't, or Hunt's not coming back for another 3 matches, is he? So
no, he won't be back before next year.
So this was like
you don't reckon he'll get back at all?
No, he did a syndesmosis and he had surgery. That's not 3 to 4 weeks. That's more like 6 to 8.
Right. Well, the club said 4, didn't they?
Yes, they did. As soon as you hear surgery, which involves either repairing a ligament or sticking a pin to hold the two bones together, it's a lot longer than that. So,
yeah, right. Well, I think he would be a good replacement for him. So, I thought he played really well.
You think this was a bit of a trial to see what he can do? I
think that this was evidence of how highly Goodwin rates him. That he was a player they brought in because they could have probably. I mean, I guess what the alternative is, but he was in the side. Sorry, he was in the on the emergency list. So he's been there and thereabouts, hasn't he? He's been on the emergency the last couple of games. So he went to Perth. I think that squad that they took to Perth was a tell in terms of who they see their best 26 for finals. Door being coverage for Gawny, obviously,
one of the rucks,
even Fritter. But the fact that he went there is a pretty good indication where the club see him. And he may not, they may not use him, but I think he's a good player to have up their sleeve.
So May comes back this week, obviously. Who goes out? And we'll talk changes later. But while we're talking Smith, what do you reckon? Does Hibberd keep his spot? Does Joel, what happens? in your mind, George?
I don't think I'm not as wrapped about Smith as what Bin Man is. He's a good filler. The reason he's a filler is because when you look past Smith, we don't have anyone else. He is the next best backman that we've got. Particularly now that Hunt's been injured, there is no one else to replace him. He's tall, he's athletic. But what I really, really noticed in this game was how, and we talked about this for the whole season, how that affected the rest of the players in the side. I think not having May there created a huge number of problems for us that we don't need to be facing in finals. You just simply put May back in. May's the general of the back line. He makes sure that everybody's in the right place, doing the right job. A couple of times Smith was caught badly up the ground. The ball came out the back. You would not have seen that if May was in the side. Lever then
different positions. And he wasn't in for May in covering.
No, but that meant that Lever had to take over the role that May would ordinarily do in terms of trying to general. So Lever's not playing his role as what he normally needs to. He's not watching the ball as much as he's capable. He's looking at the whole setup. I'm just not impressed by Smith. He quickly loses his man. There was a couple of situations where he did. In the first quarter, he was great, took a couple of marks, and people look at that and go, fantastic. It was great. He did okay. But he is not a long-term solution down there. So I think it'll be just straight out May in, Smith out this week. There is no other role for Smith in the current structures.
Well, I think he could play Hunt's role. And so for me, it's Hunt or Hibberd. And I thought Hibberd was good, but Hibbert's lost he's lost a bit of pace. And Goodwin really values speed across the ground. I mean, Bowey's helped in that area. But he's genuinely quick, Smith, and that's I think that's where Hibberd's probably weakness at the moment is he's nowhere near as quick as he used to be. He's been terrific on the whole this season, Hibberd, and I thought he was good actually on the weekend. So, I mean, with his experience, he probably stays in. But for me, that's the role. It's the role that we've lost with Hunt, the player who provides overlap run. Bowey's sort of not really that player. A little bit he is that, I guess, and there's Rivers. But come finals, I really think that Goodwin values speed, on a good deck. And so for me, it's Hibberd or Smith. Yeah, and most people will go Hibberd and with all, with good reason. But I've always rated Smith probably a bit more highly than many.
And I think that's also why Smith's got an extension to his contract this year. That he's reserve. We saw when Tomlinson went down this year. We've been lucky, to have Petty ready and available, and we've had a great run with injuries, quite frankly. But if we lose, we lost May for a couple of weeks, and we had fillers in there during that period of time. But if we get one or two longer term injuries next year, that's when you need Smith to be available. The other thing that's worthwhile thinking is that we have got a shocking draft hand this year. Our first pick is number 30, our second is number 41, our third's 55, and our fourth is 91. We'll probably lose 3 players without any question of a doubt at the end of this year, which means if you're looking at whether you keep someone like Smith in the side as opposed to pick 91, I think it's an easy solution. And we'll probably see the same with a few other players who are on the fridge, perhaps like Hibberd and Vandenberg at the end of the season, who would normally have been let go. But this year, I think it's going to be let's keep these guys because we need the insurance, and we're not going to get a 17-year-old to pick 91 or pick 110 or whatever it might be, who are capable of replacing him.
And this is a function that's a function of the gamble they took with Cozzy and trading up to get Cozzy and Jackson in. That's the price, and we're seeing the benefit of it. It's interesting you say about tall defenders because it's Dean Turner, isn't it? He looks like a good natural footballer down back. But they're playing Bradkey down back, or at least they have in the last couple of VFL games that they've played. which is interesting. Probably a bit of about his football education, but two, as you say, George, it's probably an indication of their concerns about a tall defender. May is critical for us. I mean, Smith's not replacing May. May is absolutely critical. It's interesting, when May first came to the team, they wanted him to lose weight and play more up the ground and be the running type. It's just not his go, is it? His go's sort of playing deep, being strong in the contest. That's his strength. And without him, we don't really have another player who is sort of fits that mould.
The usual suspects in defence played their roles well despite May's absence. Bowey looks very settled and composed in this team. He's racked up 18 possessions in just his third game. He's got as mentioned, the Rising Star nomination, our fourth for the year, behind Rivers, Jordan and Jackson. I'm loving Rivers, especially when he goes down the ground with that thumping kick, and he's had the 550 metres gained. Petty's confidence to take a grab down back is just lovely to watch. He's had 88 intercepts at 91% efficiency, and Lever just doing Jakey Lever stuff with his 6 intercepts. I could almost hear the booing directed towards every television set in Adelaide, and I just loved it. And how could I forget Salem with their game high 29 disposals? He had a nice, neat game as well. Big man.
Yeah, that's well summed up. Petty's really coming into himself, isn't he? And don't you love to see the defenders mark the footy? Yep. It's just worth its weight in gold when you get those marks. Like late in the game, he cleanly outmarked. Yep. What's the Fogarty. No mean effort, because Fogarty's strong and Petty's not super strong. He just outread it really. But the second one near the end of the game, almost every other defender puts that over the boundary line. It shows a bit of confidence to take that mark, because if you drop it and you're on the ground and it stays in, you've coughed up a goal in an open forward line. But he had no thought but to mark that. He's got good hands.
Great pair of hands, yeah.
Yeah, there was a bit of talk on Demonland about him being able to sort of go back or play up forward as he did for that little patch, I think back in, was it 2019? He did a bit of time up forward. Yep. There's no way I'd have him anywhere but defence. He's one of the most natural defenders I've seen for a long time, and I think he's got a bright future.
George?
Yeah, not much more to add. Sorry?
About any of the defence, I just thought I'd lump them all together.
I think it's great for us that here we are 1 week out of the final, and we've got this bloke named Bowey who's just come into the side and has made no mistakes, well prepared, great kick, and then to slot him into a half-back line with Rivers and Salem in there as well. It's just fantastic. We've got exactly what we want along that half-back line. People who can come out of the defence, who can kick properly, which is what will please Bin Man no end. Yeah. At the start of the year, or even certainly last year, it was all a bit doubtful, and we had people who didn't have these abilities, but now we've got 3 people in a line who are all just first-class kicks. I can't remember. I think Bowey had something remarkable in terms of his kicks out of his possessions. Something like, I can't remember what his 18 possessions, but 15 of them were kicks, and I can't remember one of them going astray. It's not just throw the handball away to get rid of it sort of situation. He's using his feet to really open up the paths further up the field. Fantastic effort. So the back lines, we thought it was strong at the start of the season. It's looking even stronger now.
Yeah, that's right. It's improved, hasn't it? He's such a neat player, Bowie. Makes good decisions as well, and he's got exactly that same skill you're talking about, that basketball skill of handballing to a player's advantage. So they don't have to break stride. They run onto it. He puts it out in front of them, not handballs to him, which is something Sparrow does a bit. He put handballs at the stationary players, and in basketball, that's so annoying when players do that. It's same in AFL footy. Gawn Jackson in the chat room mentioned something that I sort of wanted to highlight about our defence is on the first crack, they were talking about a rating, which I'd not heard before, but a rating, I forget what they called it, using 4 measurements. One of them is, I I think defensive pressure, and there's sort of 4 metrics that make up this system. We're ranked with 4 points. The next best with Geelong was 24 points, and they're miles ahead. And that was sort of the argument that King used to say, well, by the numbers, we should be premiership favourites. And it just sort of, I guess I don't really understand what metrics they use properly, but it's more the point. The overall point is just how good our defence is compared to any other team. And as you say, George, it seems to have got better.
Let's move on to our mids. I thought Clarion Track did what they needed to do in this match. Weren't out and out stars, but did whatever they needed to do. And Tracks kicked the 2 goals. Disappointingly,
can I just say on them before we jump off them, Andy?
Sorry,
I was thinking during the game about Track and Oliver. How good would they be if those 2 boys could kick the footy properly?
I was just about to say, because Track, some of his kicks are pinpoint. The one that's on the Demonland homepage to Cozzy was pinpoint, but then there was one that he kicked out in front of some. It just went nowhere near.
He's amazing. It's that kick that you mentioned. He's brilliant at those weighted kicks.
He is,
like
but
a soccer player, he seems to be able to wait when he's kicking to a spot there where he has to weight it. He's brilliant when he's kicking to someone on a lead, or he has to drill it flat, low and flat. He just seems to have no ability to hit it. No, it's a technique thing.
And usually it's under no pressure either. I don't know why. And he's such a good footballer. We know he's a great footballer. He's got great skills. So what's happening?
Well, his technique's woeful. He drops it from so high. And then, poor old Oliver, if he could kick a goal, he would be Brownlow medal favourite by a mile, wouldn't he?
Yeah. And it's not just the set shots. He also misses the snaps and on the run. I don't know what's happening there.
I think the important thing, particularly this week, was that Track got 2 goals and Oliver had 2 kicks at goal that he hasn't been getting even in the previous weeks. Yeah. They're moved far further up the ground in a more attacking mode, which I think eventually it'll come good in at the right end of the season. But they're not standing back and leaving it all to the forwards. We're becoming more potent and more threatening up forward as a result of these guys moving further up the ground.
That's a really good point. And to be fair to Track, he's deadly accurate from 2 metres out directly in front. Doesn't miss them at all, ever.
Been informed by AF in the chat room that it's Bowey as in Bowser, not Bowey as in David. And I just keep getting it wrong. Every time I think it's one, it's the other.
That's the Glenn Waverley, Mount Waverley. I'm sticking with Bowey now.
Talking mids, I thought there was a lack of pressure at times at the stoppages. James Harm frustrates me to no end. He's been so inconsistent from week to week. With Viney, because he was fantastic last week, with Viney likely coming back in the team, how do you boys see our midfield? Does Harms come out of the main midfield group or who makes way for Viney? Perhaps Sparrow, I don't think, had such a great game this week. George, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's the dilemma for this week. I think it's pretty straightforward. Harms or Sparrow will come out. Like you, I was frustrated the hell by Harms. His lack of skill under when he's not under pressure is really evident. There was a couple of times in the game where he was running into the 50 and completely and utterly missed the player on the lead. I don't think we should let him anywhere near the centre square. He's okay around the ground in those tough multi-person type scenarios, but there are a number of occasions at centre bounces where he completely and utterly lost his man. And that's happened for the last couple of weeks. He's just hasn't got the nous to be able to work in the situations where you've got highly talented opposition players with not too many others around to block their paths and create the opportunities. I think he really struggles in that. But at the and I think he only had 61% disposal efficiency. And while you don't expect mids to have great disposal efficiency, it was the out of bounds on the full without any pressure, the lack of being able to kick to hit an easy target from 30 metres away. these sort of things will kill you in finals. You just don't get away with it in finals. You get away with it in these sort of games. Sparrow was similar. I hold hopes for Sparrow. He's got the right sort of body as a mid. He had a couple of turnovers which weren't probably favourable to him, and probably will see him drop out. The good thing for Sparrow is he's only played a couple of games this year. He's a young player who will develop. He doesn't quite know what to do yet. You can see that when he gets a mark, he's looking around, looking for options, whereas other players, more experienced players like the Petrarcas and Olivers, they're already playing on and looking for the options while they're on the move. Sparrow's taking 3 or 4 steps back and trying to assess. He's a player who's under pressure to try and perform, but he's only young. It's not unexpected for him.
You have a look at Bowey. When he gets the ball, he's not doing that. He looks very composed. Looks like he's played 200 games already.
I totally agree. And some players it comes naturally too. Yeah. But yes, so I think they'll hold Harms in it simply because he's got that more mature body. He's reliable to a certain extent, but I think Viney will easily come back in for Sparrow this week, and Viney will take the role in the middle more than Harms will.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Sparrow, sort of Bowser plays sort of a slightly different role, obviously.
Yes, true.
And, I watched his AFL vision, Stats Pro vision as well, Sparrow, and he was basically playing that defensive role that Viney plays, that mid role. He's always in the contest, so he doesn't have much space often to kick it, and he's got a pretty neat technique. He butchered a couple, but not as badly as I thought. Actually, I sort of had it in my mind that he turned it over a lot more than he actually did. I think he went 68%, which is on average for his disposal efficiency. But he's a hard worker, and they've obviously got a lot of time for him. He's been basically all season at the medical sub. And again, it's a bit like the point that you've made a few times this season, George, about the way that they're preparing multiple players for different roles. So he's got, it almost looks like Viney the way he plays and his strengths, and he's built a bit like Viney. He's only 21. He's going to be a beast when he's 25. And it's almost like he's doing his apprenticeship now, and he'll probably will come out. He'll probably go back, to be honest, to it'd be hard to take off as a medi sub. They look like they're sort of putting time into him. Obviously value what he brings. I looked at his stats, nothing remarkable, but watching his vision, he's in a lot of contests. He reminds me so much of Viney, not just playing similar role and a bit of a similar build, but he gets pinged for holding the ball more often than most players, and I think he gave away 4 kicks for 3 of which were getting pinged for holding the ball. But
some of those holding the balls, he could not do anything about that. And I don't know how they're even holding the ball.
About the umpires.
No, I've got to that later on. Don't worry about that. But he's also laid 7 tackles.
Exactly. So, I mean, basically playing the Viney role. So he'll come out, you'd think. Harms seems to be a player who plays better in the big games. I've always thought that he seems, when the sort of heat comes out of a game and he's playing, he's not got a role, a role or specific job to do, and it's not sort of against one of the top teams. He seems to sort of try to do too much, but the sort of big occasions seem to concentrate his mind a bit, and he sort of plays a bit more within his limitations, I reckon.
Well, we've got 5 big weeks coming up, hopefully.
Well, there's that. But those two are different positions, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I think Harmsy plays better because the tough games are just tougher and harder, which suit his style of play. Yeah, when it's freer and open, exactly right. He just gets exposed. But the thing I really like about Sparrow is, like, you've hit it on the nail on the head. He's serving an apprenticeship at the moment. The important thing from his perspective is he's exactly like Viney in that sense. He can get the ball. He's in and under, tough in and under, and he's prepared to tackle in those scenarios. And yes, he's making mistakes at the moment, but next year or the year after, because I'm sure he'll be around, people will go, where have you been hiding this bloke?
Exactly.
So.
Exactly, and he will have done his time in that one of just about, must be almost the hardest position to play. Like there's, you constantly get knocked because you're always under pressure, physically demanding. Your mistakes are right there. If you have a quiet game, everyone knows it because it's, a midfield's supposed to get 25 possessions, and I think he's better kick than Viney. So he's got good depth on his kicking as well as a player like Rivers. The club obviously, as I said, rate him super high, and I think he's going to be a sort of a stalwart of the club for a long time.
Hiding in plain sight. Let's move on to the.
Just before we move on, Andy, I just want one thing about Track that I really noticed on the weekend is how well he marks the ball when it's out in front of him. And he took a number on the wing where he sort of times his jump and he marks it out in front of him, and he makes it impossible for opposition players to spoil.
Yeah.
One, he's got super clean hands, but he doesn't have to get up that high off the ground. But he just seems to be able to time how he jumps for it to almost make it, doesn't matter who the player is behind, they haven't got the opportunity to reach over, and he's hitting the ball while he's moving, if that makes sense. So it just sort of, I noted it a couple of times in the game. He's so reliable with those marks on the wing when he's sort of coming at the ball with any pace.
Agreed. Ben Brown, I thought his first quarter was superb. He was doing exactly what we expect of him in terms of leading patterns in the forward line and contesting and leading up the ground. Faded a bit out of the game, but without the extra tall forward in someone like McDonald, he was often double teamed. That's less likely to happen with T-Mac coming back into the team, but it did allow Fritsch to go berserk because he was often left with probably the second, maybe third best defender. So I think you sort of alluded to that earlier, George. That's the good thing about having Ben Brown in the team. I don't think we need to dwell too much on that, but Ben Brown will be a lot better for T-Mac coming back in and taking a bit of the heat off him because it was that old double team show with one key forward.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well summed it up. He might have faded out in terms of kicking goals, but then Fritsch picked up the mantle pretty quickly to keep the pressure on. But that's the beauty of like I spoke about earlier. That's the beauty of Brown. He's there for not just kicking a goal. It's what the opportunities he creates for others around him and the space that he creates. I really like the way he leads, and when, like you said, when T-Mac comes back in as well, you've got that pair of people running a series of interlocking forward leads, and Brown's providing another target up the wings that T-Mac used to do almost exclusively on his own when he was playing, but Brown does it just as well. And as you saw, I think it was his second goal that he kicked where he almost marked it over the top of Gawn, I think it was.
Just puts those big arms up.
Yeah, just put those big arms up, and they're probably 7 foot off the ground when he's got his feet off the ground, but when he jumps, it's even further up. And I think that's why we're suddenly moving the ball much deeper into the forward line, because he is a serious threat and possibility from our perspective of getting that mark in there that we previously didn't have in those before he started getting the regular game. Now he is. I think we're going to see more of him in the finals, and he's got his confidence back, kicking goals. Took him a couple of weeks to get it back on track, but he certainly looks pretty accurate to me at the moment. He's got the old technique working beautifully.
Magnificent, and he's not doing what he did 3 weeks ago. It looks like maybe he's been listening to the podcast. He's not spinning the ball in his hand or not doing it as much.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed. It's great, isn't it fantastic to see players take their chances? And it was a big factor in that first quarter because, they played pretty well, I thought. For him to kick his 2 goals, one was for 40-odd metres on a pretty serious angle, and then Melksham to slot that goal. It means so, makes such a big difference. And then conversely, it felt like we were watching a sort of mirror image of where Melbourne used to be, with the Crows just wasted so many opportunities, didn't they? Like they kicked 1-5, 1-6 in that quarter, 3 of which were very gettable. A couple of others weren't not so much, but in a way, there's the game right there. Is we take our chances, they don't. Well, I mean, we would have probably won anyway, but it just makes such a big difference. And in the chat room, D's Nuts asked whether Fritsch, the best forward line combo is Fritsch, Brown, T-Mac. And from my view, absolutely. And you chuck an improving forward in Jackson in there, and that is suddenly a serious weapon come finals when height, you don't get any smaller, do you? Jackson's improving his marking, he's improving his kicking. That's a real weapon. And the other thing is, it's a really good point, George. He's pushing up the ground like T-Mac, and often you'll get three big talls trying to mark the ball or going for a mark on the half-back flank, wing. It makes it it's a big weapon for us, similar to how West Coast sort of, in 2018 when West Coast won the flag, they were dominant the way they used those three talls to mark on the wing. They were just marking, beating teams through sort of winning on that wing. We don't take as many marks because we're often, it's predictable and there's a big pack. But just to have those three players sort of waxing or four, really, it's a huge part of the way we play.
What do we sing in the chat room has asked if it'll be Ben Brown's first final, but no, just checked. He's got to a prelim in 2015 and an elimination final in 2016, so he has played finals.
Just the other thing about forward line, I wanted to bring up the point that George made about kicking deeper, and as a flag the last couple of weeks I'd be interested to keep an eye out for any sort of tactical tweaks that they might bring in for the as we approach the finals. And the last 2 weeks, last two games, and in particular it was very noticeable in this game, they've made a few changes the way they bring the ball into the forward line, and one of them is that they're not exclusively going to the pocket. They're still, 80% of their longer kicks from the wing are still going to the pocket, and even some from the corridor. But they're kicking to the hot spot a lot more often. And one of them, there were two where Brown marked directly in front. I mean, that was coming out of the middle. But there was another one that Rivers set up. And that looked like a set play because all of the talls were set up. He was bringing it in from the half-forward flank about 60 metres, 70 metres out, and he kicked it at the hot spot, and that's where all the players were. But the very next play, that entry that we had, and we took a mark, I can't recall, that might have been Brown marking, I can't recall. And we got the mark and goal. And the next entry on the same side, we kicked to the pocket, and that's where the bigs were. But it looks like that's a bit of a shift, and they're looking to be a bit, which will please lots of Melbourne fans who get annoyed with us kicking to the pocket. But it just means that it creates a problem for them. And then there was another one where instead of going to the pocket, we had Max Gawn and Brown both in the pocket and Jackson in the pocket. And Jackson split away from the contest and ran sort of across the other side of the ground, and they crossed. So, I think they're just trialling a couple of those things to be a little, to create a new look. And also they're going up the middle a bit more often from the kick out.
That's good. Two last things that I will add because I bitch about them every single week, so I thought I'd give credit where credit's due. As mentioned, we kicked much more accurately in front of goals this week, with the exception of Clayton Oliver's kicking for goal. And two, we were blessed with the umpiring going almost all of our way for the entire match. And as much as I bitch about being on the rough end of the stick when it comes to umpiring, I'm not looking for a lopsided free kick count tally our way all the time. I'd be content for it to be even and not influence the game. But, of course, I won't turn away a few cheeky ones our way. So thank you, umpires. It was nice adjudication this week.
How was that free kick against Keys, the holding the ball one? If that was a Demons player, I would have been furious. I think Jackson got it and kicked the goal. But the poor fella, he had no chance whatsoever to dispose of it.
Well, there were a few times where players just dropped the ball and it's just play on. And then there's times where someone gets crunched into the ground. They got no prior opportunity, no chance. Happened to Sparrow a few times, and it's holding the ball. I mean, what are they meant to do?
I guess that's the advantage of having the home crowd.
Well, of zero. All right. We're going to talk about changes. We'll talk about the changes for Geelong and preview. We'll do that now. After that, we're going to, the three of us have taken three each of the under 22 type players, or our under 22s, and we're just going to quickly go through a couple of them and give our opinions on them this year. But let's talk about change. That's after that. Let's talk about changes for Geelong. George, who's coming in, who's coming out? We've got May coming back. We've got T-Mac coming back. We've got Viney available. Definitely going to be three changes. Who's coming out for them, and are there any more?
No, unless they rest anyone else. Goodwin's already said in his interview today, or May, Viney and T-Mac are coming back in, so there's a minimum of the three changes. Before we talk about changes, do you think our mindset might change if the Bulldogs beat Port, meaning, well, we don't have that possibility of playing Port in Port, because obviously we probably want to avoid that. And we'll talk about that more, our own opinions about that. Does that change anything if Bulldogs win? And we sew up a top two. I really don't know. You going into a game against the team that you're going to be playing, definitely at some point in the finals, perhaps even in the grand final, it's the opportunity to really stamp your authority. Geelong, in particular, have got an ageing side. Here's an opportunity to send a message to them. But just as equally, you want to keep we're on a winning run. You know, at the end of the day, we're at the top of the ladder. You don't want to take away the momentum that we've got. So unless you've got players who've been really hanging in there, we've seen in the last 2 weeks, we've rested T-Mac, and I'm sure if and May now, I'm sure if we're actually in the final series for those two games that they would have played. So they've used the opportunity. We don't know what's going to happen with the bye and when it's going to happen and things like that, even at this stage. So I'd be loath to rest players on the chance that we don't actually have to do anything. You're going to have a break at some point, probably before the preliminary final, I'm guessing. So while you're on a winning streak, keep going, I think is my position from that. But we don't have the insight about the players' physical condition at the moment. Just leave those to the experts, and they've done pretty well so far. So in terms of managing people. Before we go on to Bin Man, who comes in for those three? Yeah, well, those three coming in, I think it's pretty easy this week. I think Melcham was appalling this week. So T-Mac takes his place. 7 possessions in a game that we've quite easily won in the end, and when the other half forward is kicking 7 goals and you get nothing. They kicked one. He kicked the one, but off 7 possessions in the game is just not good enough. It was Melcham of old again, all the half paced running. There are times when you needed to go and he didn't. I don't think Goodwin particularly likes that sort of style of play. He's a magnificent kick, but you've got to get the ball to him. T-Mac, I think, is going to provide much, much more than what Melcham can supply. And there's no one else to come out. Spargo, in the forward line in that area. You're not going to be dropping A and B. You're not going to be dropping Fritsch. You're not going to be dropping Spargo. There's no one else who's out of touch in those areas. Melcham's the obvious one to me. Sparrow, I think we've talked about, and that's why I think he'll drop out for Viney, and May will come in for Smith as an easy option. The only other possibility is Hibbert. That'll be a borderline situation, but I suspect Hibbert will keep his spot, particularly when Smith ran out of legs in the third quarter. He was cramping off the ground for a long period of time, and I don't think he's ready for the run into finals as much. He also copped quite a big knock. For some reason, this guy just constantly gets those type of injuries, those heavy knock injuries. Go ahead, George. I was just going to say, so those three seem like easy ones to me, but we've been wrong in a big way in the past.
Big man, can you see us, if we have locked up a top 2 spot, can you see us, not obviously resting half the team, but playing some creative selections, or even just not showing our hand against Geelong? In this,
I've been pondering this question, and it's really interesting. I didn't hear that, George, that Goodwin had guaranteed, or he's a pretty good Goodwin. He doesn't play much. He doesn't really play ducks and drakes with selection, does he? If he says players are coming in, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So if he's said that those 3 players are coming back in, that's really interesting, because that means that we're going to have our best 22. He's rewarded this team all season. So for me, I was really waiting on that tell to see what their mindset is. So he's also doesn't strike me as a sort of coach who's going to go a different, he'll keep some cards in his hand. He won't play them. He did that against the Dogs. We saw, there's no way, for instance, they give Daniels the latitude if we play him in the finals. So tactically, he won't show things that he's got planned for us to play against the Cats. I'm positive about that. For instance, I think, as I said last week, he might not maybe he'll tag a Selwood in the finals and not in this game. They're the sorts of changes that he'll do, but he won't do. A lot of coaches in this scenario, and Geelong, Scott's exactly the sort of coach who would do this sort of stuff, is not pick his best team, rest players for this game. So that was why I was curious. So looking back on May, we'd had top 4 locked in either way, didn't we? So he could have, I think Salem, there was talk about him being rested. The fact that they didn't rest him last week means he's going to play this week. So for me, that tells me that they'll go out with their best 22, look to win, but not show all of their tactical tricks. And I think one of the definite ones that they're trying tactically but differently is their centre, their stoppage and their clearance work, and their centre clearance stuff around how they set up and how they get to the open player. We had a couple of beautiful plays on the weekend, partly because the way Adelaide set up so weird and left so much space on the other side of the contest. But, that's what we're, as George said at the top, is what we're looking for, is clean clearances, not just clearances. So there'll be a bit of that, I reckon. And I don't think he'll be too disappointed if we lose. We haven't, remarkably in this season, not only have we won a lot of games, but there's been not a single game where we've been thrashed, is there? When's the last time that's happened in the AFL even? That's it. So I think they'll go in to win. That's what this team's about. They won't play all their cards. I don't think it will make a difference what happens in the Dogs game, other than maybe causing them some distraction, the players or whatever, but I can't see that either. So I'm really looking forward to this game just from that perspective, to see what they don't do as much as what they do, but they definitely won't try all of their hand, will they? And Scott is the sort of coach who will. So he'll try all sorts of things, and they've got a big problem. We talk about May, the importance of May. Stewart's probably, it's barely a player in the AFL more important to a team's success than him, I reckon. Just the way they structure up, down, back, he's a huge out for them.
Tui's also out.
What's up with Tui? Is he injured?
Hamstring, I think.
Right. That is a big out.
So,
for instance, on the weekend, one of the, Dangerfield's been playing fantastic the last few weeks. So, how do you quell his influence? Maybe they won't do anything this week to try and quell his influence.
Well, that's what I want to ask. Are we going to do stuff like that? Or are we going to save that for another day, another final?
Save it for when it counts, because what does it matter in this, why show your tactical, they might, in finals, they might run 2 players against him, tag team him, or Harms against him. Maybe they'll tag Selwood this week, or, definitely he's become increasingly influential for them. What do they do, with someone like Hawkins? I wonder whether come finals they'll play as a flag the Petty on him rather than May, but maybe May will play him on this week, and then come finals, Petty will play on him. They're the sorts of things I'll be looking for.
How do you see us taking on their forward line? We're coming up against a forward line that's probably a bit more formidable than the other teams in the top 8. Hawkins, Cameron, even Rowan can all cause headaches at various times. Do you see that as a big problem for us? How are we going to set up?
No, I think we'll set up how we... Well, the one question mark or the one difference will be potentially Petty playing on him, which would be a change because, it was Tomlinson picked him up after May went down, but May went to Hawkins first. But they might play Petty on him in the way that Taylor played on him from the Giants. Maybe, but other than that, if we just revert to May playing on him, then we'll structure up exactly how we have. Our system won't change. That's the advantage of having a system that's so rock solid defensively, is it's up to the opposition to do something. Now, they might, their challenge, as all teams are, Adelaide didn't worry about it, but they'll look to try and quell the influence of Lever. Maybe they'll tag him. They'll have to worry about Salem, but then you've got Bowser on the other side. So I don't think we'll make any changes to how we play. The whole thing will be about that sort of how much pressure we're putting on that last kick in.
I think the problem for Geelong is what they're going to do about us rather than us worrying about them. Their forward line's what it's going to be. They got St Kilda by the scruff of the neck in the end, but that was only because St Kilda completely gave them the game with some just appalling turnovers in the middle, and the lack of run was just striking for me from a number of the St Kilda's highly paid players at that. Geelong's worry is, in the absence of Tui and Stewart, what are they going to do about Brown and Jackson and T-Mac down the other end? It doesn't matter what Hawkins does if he kicks 4 or 5. It doesn't matter if we're kicking 6, 7 and 8 down the other end. Who are they going to put on Fritsch? That's their worry, that's going to be the difference in the game.
Totally, and I maybe I've got a bit of a set against Geelong, but I've always thought Hawkins is overrated in the sense that he's an excellent player and he's the best kick for goal in the AFL, and he's arguably having his best season. So he's been good this year, but I reckon he's a bit one-dimensional, and he's still like the old school full forward. But players like Taylor was running off him. And, we'll look to run off him at every opportunity. He doesn't get up the ground in the way that he does get up there a little bit, but nowhere near like Tom McDonald does and Brown does. So, spot on, George, is that people think about their forward line, and they've got 3 good players down there. I'm not sure the redhead, is he back?
Rowan. He's not at the moment.
Yeah, so he's and Cameron's a star, but Hawkins, you can run off him, and he's a sort of player that These Nuts mentions the body language of Melksham, and I agree. He's in the chat room. His body language wasn't great, particularly when he booted the ball from Spargo, didn't get it to him, but. Same with Hawkins. When Hawkins doesn't go right for Hawkins, his body language is terrible. He whinges to the umpires. So, you're spot on, George. It's time for other oppositions to start worrying about our forward line, because Tom McDonald slots straight back in. Suddenly you've got 2 players with Brown running into form that are genuine talls. You've got, what's Jackson's kicked, 6 goals in the last 2 weeks? He's coming into form. And then if they want, they can push Gawn forward. And create another tall problem. And as you say, Fritsch is the best sort of medium forward in the AFL in terms of kicking goals. I heard Ralphie talk about him being a chance for all Australians. So, they've got to be worrying about us.
They certainly do. All right. Pre-finals break, that's obviously not happening anymore. They've announced it today. There is no pre-finals break. There's likely to be some type of break coming either before the preliminary or before the grand final. How's that going to, what are the pros and cons for us in that regard? Big man, you seem to have the handle on all that.
Yeah, was wondering the same thing, obviously, when they talked about it. And you posted on Demonland today that Swamp had put that stat up. Am I reading that right? That it's the stat is that no pre-finals bye, 28 of 32 made the grand final, and then after they introduced the pre-finals bye, only 4 of 10 have made the grand final.
Yeah, so that's the qualifying final, so the top 4 teams.
Playing the qualifying final. So finishing top 4, playing the qualifying final. Basically, it was a pathway for before they introduced the pre-finals bye to make the grand final, much less so afterwards. That's a pretty statistically striking difference. I mean, I guess 10's not quite. Maybe you want to get to 30 before it's clear, but let's say it was 30 and 15. I reckon that's because
too much break.
The bye disadvantages top 4 teams.
So that pre-bye and then having the week off the next week.
Well, but also the teams that manage their season, to get to the finals in their peak condition, they're prepared well, they're fit, they're okay in okay shape injury wise. This is all Melbourne at the moment. Whether that's through luck or probably a combination of luck and good management, that they're in good position. And as you say, they've got that. They're disadvantaged by teams that can get that week to get their players a chop out. Like Geelong, how much would Geelong be advantaged now? I mean, they're top 4 as well. But, even a team like Brisbane, as getting their best team back, I mean, it's basically what gave the Dogs that pathway to the grand final that year, wasn't it? Having that 1 week break meant that they were able to get their guns back for the finals. So I think it's a real disadvantage in some respects. So conversely, it's a real advantage for us because we're super fit. We've got, touch wood that we don't.
You're saying not having a break's an advantage.
Not having a break is a huge advantage for us because we're the fittest team. We've got a fantastic run with injury. Let's touch wood, touching everything to your wooden in front of me that, we'll get no injuries on the weekend. And so we've got a full list. Even if we do got a couple, we've got depths in good, across most positions. We are in good shape to play that first final. And I'm not really sure about Port, but at the moment, the Dogs and the Cats are limping towards the finals. Both teams are struggling physically. Bruce is out for the Dogs. The Cats have got Rowan in down. You mentioned Tui. Stewart's out for the rest of the season. They're, as George has pointed out any number of times, they're an ageing side. This is when they're struggling. They'd be desperate for a week's break. They'd be furious. I haven't heard Scott say anything about it yet, but I'm sure he's behind the scenes. He's bloody furious. He has said something, hasn't he? He's said that it's ridiculous that they haven't, before they announced it, and that was probably a sign of his frustration. So I think it's great for us. What happens if they create a bye before the grand final, though? That throws that all out, that stat, because that's not happened before.
That's sort of unavoidable given the COVID situation and potentially, and it looks like it might be played in Perth. So they're going to need that for quarantine purposes.
What about Port, George? How are they looking injury-wise? I mean, they've got some of their better players back now.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. That in the last couple of weeks they've got back the Rosies and the Butters and the Georgiades, Greys back this week. I'm still not worried about Port because they just played a one-dimensional type of game, but certainly having that sort of quality group of players coming back in makes a big difference to the overall side.
But even with those players, that sort of, they would love a week's break too, because someone like Rosie's this will only be his third, fourth game maybe this weekend. So you still need a chop out. We're in good shape. So of the top 4, if we were asked, do you want to play this week? We'd say yes. The other teams probably wouldn't. So that's advantage us, I reckon.
I think the big advantage will, the big disadvantage will come to teams like GWS, who've probably got a good run of form at the moment. But when you look at the number of players and the quality of players they've got sitting on the sidelines who would have had that extra week to come in, that's not going to happen for them now. So I think they'll won't go as far as what they would have if we'd had the pre-finals bye.
Yeah, and it's funny, George, because that's exactly right. They would be a much, much bigger threat if they had a week's break, because I totally agree with what you said before, Andy. I see them as one of the key threats, actually. They are looking in ripper form. They've got such good quality. If they could get some of their better players back, that would be huge for them. So that, and they've had to do it really hard. So same as Sydney in terms of being in Melbourne. It's interesting, though, that decision to create that pre-season bye, there's been a bit of a revisionism about why that's happened. And now it's sort of talked about, well, it creates an even playing field and it gives, the opportunity for all clubs to put their best team on the park in the finals. For me, that's and by doing so, creating that sort of level playing field. And that's why I don't like it. Because why should those teams get that advantage when, we're, for instance, in our case, we're prepared well, we've got to come finals in good shape. Why should we lose that comparative advantage? But that sort of revisionism, it should be remembered why that was brought in. It was brought in because teams, and in particular, Freo did it. They played basically not even a VFL standard team down in Tassie. And the AFL jumped at shadows, and to stop that, to stop teams putting out so that they didn't get any injured. I think they lost the next week, Freo, didn't they?
Yeah.
So, it was typical AFL thing, jumping at shadows and making a change on the back of something that wasn't really that big an issue. But that was their argument why they did it. So this subsequent thing about, teams being fresh is sort of become afterwards. Dead rubbers are dead rubbers. They should have just left it.
I'm just looking at the ladder at the moment, and I can't believe that they've still got the sports bet. Collingwood is still $251 to win the premiership, despite being.
That's because Collingwood supporters will put money on it.
Anyway, ladder predictions. It's quite simple now that we're down to not much to go, and I can't
make it complicated though, Andy.
I can't get much wrong now. Win and we're on top. That's a given. You win, everything else is out there. It's all a matter of who we play. But I guess the worry for me, the thing that's keeping me up at night is Port winning. Beating Bulldogs and us losing to Geelong, sending us to Adelaide in front of a hostile crowd in the first week of finals. That's really worrying me. Are you guys worried about Port? Who's your preferred team to play in the first week of finals? And I also realise that the Lions are quite a good chance to sneak into fourth position. And if we finish top, it's a possibility we could play Lions in Melbourne, I guess, in the first week of finals. Does that worry you? Who do you want to play? Who don't you want to play first week out? George, I might go to you first.
Really easy, Andy. We're playing Geelong this week.
Okay,
we play to win.
Yeah, I'm not saying you go to lose.
What everybody else does is of all the teams in the competition, surely Melbourne would know we don't depend on other teams getting results for us to be successful.
No, but this time next week we'll know who we're playing. So I'm asking you now, just because we won't get this opportunity, who would you like? Who would you not like to play? Who would you like to play? We're obviously going to have to come up against the best in the next few weeks anyway, but just as a first off.
I'm less worried about playing Port than Brisbane, because I think Brisbane, when they get on a roll, they can do some damage. They've got a number of good players across the whole field. But Brisbane without Hipwood are a completely different option. I don't think they play as well in Melbourne. I think we're better than Port. I'm still not sold on their coach. I think he sticks to the same old game plan every week. Depends on Charlie Dixon and depends on Boak and depends on Wines to keep getting the ball and the goals, and anything else that falls his way is good. So, no, I'm not worried. We're the best team in the competition at the moment. Brisbane and Dogs and Geelong have suffered some injuries which are going to put them out of the equation to a greater extent than what it was three weeks ago. But we just got to keep winning, and that's all. And if we play Port, we'll beat them as well. If we play Brisbane, we'll beat them as well.
There's a couple of interesting things in there. One, the AFL pretty much said they won't play finals in front of no crowds. So
where are we playing then?
Well,
yeah.
We might be playing in Adelaide that first week anyway.
Yeah.
Depends what the SA government do. But there's there's some chance, I reckon, they'll send all the teams to WA. Maybe I don't know if they'll be able to get games up in Queensland, but they seem to have put a flag in the ground that they're not going to play games in front of an empty stadium.
Are you saying that if we finish first, we beat Geelong and Bulldogs beat Port, we're going to play Port in Port?
No. They'll 100%. They won't. 100%. They won't. They'll give us a choice. There's no way that they've said that they won't. They won't play a team that finishes above at the home ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we might play Geelong, whoever.
Oh, that I don't care. That's fine.
Yeah. So I think. So on that, I mean, I think that who would I'd rather not play? It might be Brisbane and Adelaide. I rate Brisbane more highly than Port. I think, they've been on a roll, but it should be remembered with Brisbane, they've beaten up no one in the last few weeks. They've beaten no one in the top five. I think probably Port, once they get rolling with their really up and about emotional time, that's where they can be damaging if they get the crowd behind them.
Well, that's why I don't want to play that.
Play really great at Adelaide, and I think there's something in that thing about finishing top and finishing fourth. That about the benefit of finishing second or third. I'm convinced that part of that is how tough that game, second v third, is, and that a game in front of a Port crowd at Adelaide will put us in good stead for a prelim. Should we win the game? I really reckon that they're a team that's in a good headspace at the moment. They play Adelaide Oval well. They've shown already this year they can beat Port on their home deck. They're a team that I think thrives taking away the emotion of a Port team and sucking the oxygen out of the crowd. So, to be honest, just partly from a spectacle thing, I wouldn't mind. I'd love to watch us beat Port at Port. I think we'll, sort of partly on that thing that George was saying about them already locking in T-Mac, May and Viney coming back. That tells me the mindset is to win this game. So, I was wondering who I'd tip, but now I'm pretty confident that I'll tip the Ds. It's a moot point. Beyond that, it'll be a bit about where we're playing. But, I think, as George said, we're the best team in the AFL. So, I wouldn't be too worried if we end up playing Port at Port. But obviously, that's the least, of all the options. You want to avoid that if you can, and we can avoid that by winning this Saturday night.
So a win on Saturday night, then we look at the result of the Bulldogs game. Bulldogs win, we play Port. If Port wins, it all depends on percentage between the Bulldogs and the Lions. So it depends how much the Bulldogs lose by, and conversely also how much the Lions win by. If it's just what the default is on this AFL ladder predictor, which is I think 10 or 15 points for both games, Brisbane actually finish above the Bulldogs if the Bulldogs lose. So in that case, we would play Brisbane.
If we do finish second,
no, this is first. This is us winning.
Yeah, right. So if we do happen to lose, then it'll give people the opportunity to bemoan the draw against the Hawks. That'll be 1 point.
Well, it is, yeah. So the situation is if we lose and the Bulldogs win, we finish second, playing the Bulldogs. I don't think there's any other. It is. So if we lose, Bulldogs win, we play Bulldogs, second versus third. If we lose and Port wins, we play Port in Port. Simple as that. No other situation can arise.
No other permutation.
So we're either if we lose, we're either playing Bulldogs or we're playing Port in Port. So that's the situation if we lose. If we win, percentage comes in and it depends. We might be playing Bulldogs or Brisbane.
Well, I mean, it's a fascinating round.
Or Port, sorry.
It's around for a while. Port at Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium on Friday night will be just it's fantastic game of footy. It's a pity there's no crowd, obviously, but that's a lot riding on it just from all of those permutations you just said. But for both of those teams, if the Dogs lose that, I mean, what have they? Are they going? They've lost the last couple, haven't they?
That'll be three. That'll be three in a row, and then having to play. Well, it depends what happens in the last round. Looks like they'll play Essendon. But who knows with my predictions. But I can't see Essendon losing to Collingwood, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah. But again, just to pick up your point from before, I see GWS as the real threat outside the top four.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be a good game. Looks like Sydney, it'll be, because GWS should beat Carlton. My ladder predictions, have been wrong in the past, but they should beat Carlton. Swans should beat Suns, so it looks like it'll be Swans, GWS in the first final.
Down in
where? Geelong.
Won't be in Sydney. Won't be in Melbourne. Where's that one?
No, they might, unless they can get them over to Adelaide or something.
It depends. I mean, as I said, they want to play all those games in front of a crowd. So
particularly if Adelaide don't play, or Port Adelaide don't get a home final. If they don't win this week, then they're not getting a home final. So they might ship that Sydney GWS over to Adelaide,
which makes them
spend like 7 days in the practice nets at AFL at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, which makes an absolute mockery of what the AFL's come out and said about playing in front of crowds. Can you imagine what sort of crowd will be drawn between the Swans and GWS in Adelaide?
Well, you would hope that the Adelaide fans get out and support the AFL.
No, no, Andy. Unless Port and Adelaide are playing, they're not interested in anyone else.
Well, if they want crowds,
and they're going to have the same problem when they play grand finals in Perth. If West Coast isn't in there, you won't have any worries about getting a ticket.
So if we lose this week and Bulldogs win and we play Bulldogs, where's that game likely to be played in the first week of finals?
We in the first week of finals, we'll be playing here in Melbourne.
So in front of nobody.
In front of nobody.
No, they've said.
I've heard otherwise. I've heard that the preliminary final and the grand final will be played in Perth, and preceding finals, the advantage will be given to the home team who would otherwise get the advantage. So they'll play in Port, they'll play in Melbourne, they'll play in Geelong, but they won't be playing anywhere else.
So a qualifying final at the MCG in front of no people.
That's correct.
So there is no scenario where we play Geelong in the first week of finals, so that GMHBA Stadium's out of the equation 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, but Geelong might play someone else in the first week of finals.
That'll be interesting, George, to see if that comes to pass. But I just can't see it. But you've got good intel, but I just think that would be. I mean, I know I'm torn. I mean, I would almost prefer to see us play in front of a crowd at Adelaide Oval, but
not against Adelaide.
Yeah, but we won't get a crowd in Adelaide as well for the same reasons.
You don't think
fans rocking up?
No, people they're just not going to turn up.
You don't think Melbourne Bulldogs in Adelaide Oval, second versus third, would get
20,000, 30,000? Melbourne, there's 10,000 Melbourne fans over there.
I don't know about that.
No, I don't know about that either.
Right, well, that'll be really interesting to see. This time next week we'll know, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
And at the end of the day, Andy, if an umpire in Adelaide had paid that free kick for a deliberate out of bounds, we wouldn't be having any of this discussion. We would have been top of the ladder in one game clear.
Had we kicked straight against Hawthorn or other games, the same situation.
Hawthorn only gives us another 2 points. Adelaide would have given us 4 points, and there'd be no question about it.
But even the 2 points,
we might have got ahead of ourselves, and who knows?
The 2 points in Hawthorn would have had us. I don't think even Geelong beating us. They'd have to beat us by a fair bit to overtake us. We would have sewn up top spot.
Would have been a percentage problem then.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
anyway, let's go on. We're just we put together.
I'm looking forward to next week when they can't do a bloody ladder predictor.
Well, we can. That's the finals predictor. Then we can talk about each week of the finals and who will be playing the next week. Win or lose, right. We'll have sort of a better indication of what's happening. Obviously. All right, we put together. We took 3 players each. B-Man, do you want to set up what we did?
Yeah, just thought it would be good. And I mean, we're probably sort of, I'll jump through them, but just looking at some of those younger players, and it was really great to see that sort of best under 22s team and how many players we had in it. And, we've talked all season about Petrarca and Gawns and Olivers and, the Guns, I guess, and touched on all of the other players. But thought it'd be good just to have a look at the season so far of some of those younger players under 22 and, their last couple of games and what the sort of their role in the team is and, what it looks like going forward for them a little bit. George makes a note that we've probably got, who do you reckon, all Australians under 22, George?
In that team that was announced, we had 5.
So, all Australians. So, 5 in the All Australians under 22.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
Petty, Rivers, Jordan, Pickett, Jackson. Yeah, so that's a pretty impressive bunch of young players. Is Pickett probably isn't going to make the All Australian main side now? Is he?
No, I don't think so.
Away a bit, didn't he? So, So I thought I'd talk about Jackson. I've really spoke about a fair bit. So I was going to take Sparrow, Jackson, and Jordan, and I've probably spoken enough about Jackson and again with Sparrow too. I think that that sort of idea of him being an apprenticeship. I think it's really interesting the way they've played him this season as a Medi sub. His stats don't really sort of jump out. He's pretty average, but in terms of where he's at, I'm not quite sure how they do those stats, whether they adjust for, I presume they don't, for when he comes on as a Medi sub. So it might whack the stats out a little bit. But I think that, for a young player, I think he's going to turn 22 in a month or two. He's going to be a player that is around for a long time. He reminds me a bit of Glenn Lovett, the way he sort of moves and, his ability in the contest. And as I say, come 25, he'll be an absolute beast. And he's the obvious player to sort of transition from Viney and to come in and play that role. He's a sort of heart and soul sort of player. Going forward the next couple of weeks, I think he'll be in the squad and he'll be Medi sub or, I think Jones, unfortunately, might have missed the sort of boat for him. I think he'll probably come out of the side you'd expect, but he'll come back in. He'll be one of the first in if there's an injury. Seems like a good young bloke and a good sort of culture player. So he's the sort of player that you need. You need your 4 or 5 of them, don't you? Who can play through the midfield and can do the hard work and get down and dirty.
Who else? Who was your other player?
Jordan. And, we've talked a fair bit about Jordan through the season. I just love how he moves and, thinking of a player, that Glenn Lovett came to mind for Sparrow and the obvious one is Junior McDonald for Jordan, the same number, obviously, but they play so similarly. Both really smart ball users. Jordan's probably got him in the tackling stakes, although Junior wasn't a bad tackler either. But Jordan's fantastic tackle numbers. His stats this year have been off the charts in terms of tackling. One of the things I think they've really found a strength for Jordan is the way that they use him is he's very flexible. So he was the player who came in and replaced Viney when Viney was out. It always felt for me that Sparrow was the more natural fit, but Jordan was able to come in and play a defensive midfield role. Whereas in the first third of the season, the first 5-6 games of the season, he was sort of playing half-back wing in that spot, where he was basically an outside player. That's a really unique combination of skill sets. And I remember when the beginning of the season, one of the commentators, might have been Brown, compared him to Black for Lions. And I reckon that's a good comparison because he's got that ability to win the ball on the inside, but also use it really smart on the outside. He sort of doesn't look, to the eye, he doesn't look all that flashy. Someone like, Bowser comes in and immediately catches your attention. Jordan's not that sort of player. He looks a bit meat and potatoes, but he's got a lot more skill than at first glance, I reckon. And he's another player that they're going to be building the club around. I just really love how smart he is, the way he uses the ball. He's sort of deceptively quick, and he's got that knack of all good footballers of, knowing, he's where the footy is. I could not be more impressed. For me, he's been a standout, and he's still going under the radar. Player like Rivers pops up. Did he ever get nominated for Rising Star, Jordan?
Rivers or Jordan?
No, Jordan.
Yes, he did.
He did.
Yeah, Jordan, Rivers, Jackson, and now Bowey.
All got Rising Stars, right? I think he's even when we know how good he is, he's the sort of player, a bit like Junior McDonald again, who can fly under the radar. And he's, I think that they all seem similar to Sparrow, very coachable young men, and it would appear good. He's got a lot of time for him, but I think he's become very valuable. When he went out, for me, it was clearly resting, because I have no doubt that he's in the finals team. So he's best 22 for sure. And it gives us a lot of flexibility. So if there is an injury, you can bring him into the midfield. He can play an outside wing role if need be. He can play halfback flank. He can push forward if he has to. So he's become a really important part of our team, and 100% he's in the best 22 come finals.
George, who are your three players?
I firstly looked at, because we're looking at under 22s, I had a brief look back at 1993, where there was Essendon had the Baby Bombers, which became famous and kept the media amused for a few years, things like that. The Baby Bombers in 93 had 7 players under the age of 21. That's exactly what we've got. Their only key position player in those 7 was Dustin Fletcher, but we've got a Luke Jackson in there who's probably going to finish up being a similar quality player. So the important thing about under 22s is every team has them. If you look at the lists, there's plenty of them around. The difference is we've got 8 of them currently playing in our best 22. With a couple of others sitting around the fringes. So we're blessed, as they might say, with the talent we've got. So the players that I'm looked at was firstly Harrison Petty. We've talked about him extensively in this game, and for the 15 games that he's played in 2021 as well, after having come in to replace Adam Tomlinson, he has absolutely cemented his place and heralded in the back line. He is not moving anywhere. Made his debut in 2018, and he's 197 centimetres and 90 kilograms, picked at number 37 in the draft. He had groin surgery in 2020, which sort of ruined his year. Showed plenty of promise previous to that, even when he moved forward with his marking ability, but he certainly maintained that since going back. He averages 5.7 intercepts a game and 4 contested possessions. So, yeah, he has really found his spot down the back line, and I've got no doubt in the future he's a player who's capable of playing 200 games for the side without any doubt whatsoever. He's just that quality, and if he decides to put on a bit more weight and muscle, he may well be the Stephen May of the side in a couple of years' time. But he's still not 22. That's quite remarkable. The next one was Trent Rivers. Again, deceptive. He's 188 centimetres tall. He's played all 21 games this season for a total of 30. This is the other remarkable thing about this group of players when you look at them. Petty, for example, has only played 26 games in total. Rivers has played 30. What's remarkable about Rivers, when you look at all the stats, and we love all the stats, he's above average for contested marks, intercept marks, spoils, contested possession rate, and has played every game since round 14 last year. He is well above average player, and particularly when you put him in the back line with his superior kicking ability, again, he's just cemented that position. And the number of times that we've seen in the game, I think we first saw it the game against GWS last year, where the game was on the line and somebody needed to come out and do something. Rivers came out he snapped that fantastic goal, but also he followed it up with some intercepts and spoils, which are absolutely critical in terms of winning the game. And he's still doing the same sort of thing even in this game against Adelaide. When the heat's on you right when you need it, Rivers always seems to be able to put his hand up, and when we come into finals, that's the type of player that you need. Utterly dependable. When it's all on the line, he's the one who says, "Give it to me, I'll do the job." Last one was a bit of a surprise when I was looking through them. Is Charlie Spargo. He's not 22 until November this year.
I thought he was a bit unlucky not to make that 22 under 22. I thought he's been very consistent this year and contributes really well to the team.
Yeah. Also, like Rivers, he's played every game since round 14 last year. Just turns up every week, does his job. He's only 173 centimetres and 74 kilograms. But he's played all 21 games in this year as well for a total of 55. Again, he's similar to Rivers except they're playing at opposite ends of the ground. He's above average for freeze for disposal efficiency, for kicking efficiency, goal assists. He's a real classic product of the Murray Bush Rangers. He's just totally tough, totally reliable, and he's just one of those natural footballers. The only downside is to him he's only 173 centimetres. But as we've seen with Caleb Daniel, that isn't a problem for someone who plays and reads the play so well and contributes so well. Sorry, Andy?
Another knock on him is penetration in his kicking, particularly. Set shots from 35 out or a bit further than that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't ever use the word penetration with his kicking.
Lack of.
His range is about the top of the goal square.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting comparison to Rivers, because Rivers gets fantastic depth on his kicking, and it's a real weapon. He can, particularly if he gets the ball up around 70 metres from goal, like the one that I mentioned where he kicked to the top of the hot spot, sort of 25 metres out. He really gets good depth. And it sort of travels quickly. He's a real weapon with his kicking, Rivers.
Yeah, but with Charlie, I'm sure that Fritsch and Brown and the other forwards don't care about the kicking depth because he's able to feed it onto their chest beautifully.
Absolutely.
And his ability to kick is just extraordinary. We saw it in this game against Adelaide where he had that free kick from the boundary. And just absolutely screwed the ball around brilliantly. Just took full advantage of what was there, and split the big posts, even distance either side. So, yeah, he's exactly what you need in that forward pocket type role. But remarkably, he's still under 22.
So I had Pickett, who has been electrifying at times this season, has also gone missing for large chunks of matches. It's important to remember that he is only 20 years old. In his second season, he's only played the 35 games. He's kicked 32 goals, 26, which remarkably would have won the D's goal kicking in 08, 09, 12, 13, 14, 19 and 20. Having said that, we barely won any games in a lot of those years. We've won 16 this year, but still...
nice. Yeah, that is amazing.
I love his pressure, his attack on the ball. I wish he was a little more accurate in front of goal. He's often compared to Cyril Rioli, and at the equivalent stage of his career, as in 35 games, Cyril had 38 goals, 31. That's opposed to the 32, 26. So Cyril's 6 goals, 5 points ahead. Cyril played finals in his first year, winning the flag, and then was 9th the next year. So very similar trajectory, and Cyril now obviously has 4 premiership medallions. So hopefully Cozzy has as many for the Demons when all is said and done on his career. But we're at the start of something exciting. He's only getting better and better from here. Next one was the guy we've been talking about all night, Jake Bowey. We'll say that correctly. There's no need to write in. So I've been super impressed with his 3 games that he's played for the D's. He looks, as we said, super composed with footy in his hand. Lovely kick of the ball. 13, 21 and 18 disposals from his 3 games, which are fantastic numbers for a kid in his first year at this level, and looks totally at home in what is widely considered the best defence in the comp at the moment. So he's come into a defence that it would be very hard to crack into, and he looks like he's been playing there for years. He's playing for the rest of the season in my books, and I can't see him going out of the team, and I look forward to a long career at the Demons.
Just before, George, do you reckon he'll stay in as well?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, barring a terrible game, like two games where he doesn't get a kick, he's staying.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was just going to say, it's pretty remarkable to think of a player in his first season coming into really the best team in the AFL, on the eve of the finals, and after 3 games being a total lock, and it seems to be no question really. There's no one really talking about him, even on Demonland, that he'll drop out of the best 22. And yeah, that's for a defender. Like for a forward, you could see it. For a small forward, because you come in and you kick your 2-3 goals, and you're up and about a bit. But for a defender, to come in at that stage, particularly someone who's sort of a small defender, I guess, that's a big tick for him.
Now, the final player you gave me, big man, was Chandler. Now, I was interested to see why you chose Chandler. You didn't choose Bedford. Well, is Bedford not under 22? Is that why you did? Maybe that.
George chose the players.
George?
It was about who played this season.
Oh, this season, yeah, because I did. You gave me Chandler, and I said, unfortunately, we don't really have a body of work to judge him upon. He's clearly behind Cozzy, Spargo, Nibbler, and I would even say Bedford, who hasn't played a game this year, as you just mentioned. Chandler's been the unused Medi sub 4 times in the first half of the season, and the only match that we've seen him show his wares was against Carlton. He only had 4 disposals from 67% game time. He's never kicked a goal for the D's in he's only played 2 games all up, so he played 1. I don't even think it was last year. I think it was in 2019. 2019. I don't know what his contract status is, but I can't say him playing ahead of anyone currently in the team, and he's simply there as depth, I guess, if we have a couple of injuries. So I don't know what more to say. We haven't seen he's played 2 games.
Yeah, he's on the rookie list and is out of contract at the end of this year. Yeah,
but he'll get picked up. I think that again they've shown. That they've picked him ahead of other players, and I think it's a bit about that apprenticeship, but also covering your bases a bit, having some players in if you do have an injury. That's the thing about Smith. At least now, if they do need him in the finals, he's not coming in cold. So I think the way they've played Chandler this year is really with a strong eye to the future. So I'd be assuming, based on the fact that he's been there and thereabouts around the emergency and the Medi sub, that they'll recontract him. Don't you think, George?
Yeah, I've got no doubt about those type of players. Like he's just an apprentice in the system at the moment. He's the next wave, along with Sparrow coming through. You've got to give them some confidence and some future. You just can't leave them stuck, not playing or stuck down at Casey for the whole year. You've got to give them something to run for and something to aim for. And the coach will be telling them that, just keep doing your job. You can just be like Sparrow. You can just be like Jordan. You can just be like Bowey. When your time comes, you're going to be ready. So he'll just slot into the spot when needed. But yeah, he's just a work in progress. But he's probably our next one, and that's why we gave him to be looked at as part of this under 22.
Who went to Perth? Which small forward did they take to Perth? As we were saying, that top 26 type thing. Was it Bedford or was it Chandler?
It's a good question. I don't know. I never saw that list of 26 players.
We talked about last week's show. Yeah. Last week's show, we talked about the picture that I found on.
Yeah, I think it was Chandler. Website. I'm pretty sure it was Chandler, Dorr, Smith.
Wait a moment.
Wiedemann. Yeah, so what they're doing is, in that particular case, I think was picking a mid, a back, a forward, people who can fill in and a ruck that can fill in should something have happened in the main game. But yeah, Chandler was the next in line by the looks of things.
Now, one of the things I like about Cade is that he comes from Norwood Footy Club, so he's already a red legger.
Yep.
It was funny when I was looking up his stats. It was Chandler, by the way. I've just scrolled down there, the Melbourne Twitter feed. Yes, it was Chandler that went over. So, yeah, he's probably before Bedford. So scrap what I said. I couldn't find his stats, and then I realised I was calling him Kyle Chandler, not Cade. So.
He had 7 in his one game. He had 7 Supercoach points, so it's only up there.
I believe
from now on.
I think I have a memory from when we did the show for that, and I think he was the one that had -2 metres gained, if I'm not mistaken.
It was either him or Wiedemann.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up. We've gone 2 hours 10 minutes. I think that'll do us for tonight. So, thank you, Bin Man. Thank you, George. It's a mini final this week. Let's hope we can take out the minor premiership. I know, Bin Man, you're not so keen on taking out the minor premiership, but it's these little wins along the way. And if you recall, I do have a ongoing bet that just rolls over each week with my brother-in-law and his 3 boys, who are all Geelong supporters. And it's come down to the last round. Our bet is who finishes higher on the ladder. So you couldn't have asked for a better end to the year. I just wished either the Saints had won this week or we had beaten Hawthorn, and then I wouldn't have to worry.
Well, you're not going to tip us.
No, definitely.
You're going to tip us this week, George?
Oh, absolutely.
There we go.
The geriatrics will not come up.
Well, my tipping's based on reverse psychology, so I can't tip us because I want to win. So
it's good to know you're not superstitious.
Not at all. Not at all. I wear the same undies every week when we play. They do get washed occasionally. I've just got little things. I don't like to. If I haven't shaved, I won't shave few days out before the game because I can't do that. I've got a lot of. This is
all becoming too much information, Andy.
Well, it's just shaving my face. I wasn't not shaving anywhere else. A bit superstitious, I guess.
A final thought about this season. I think you'd know better than me because you're so good with the stats, Andy. But is this our most successful season?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ever?
I think
in terms of points at the end of the home and away season. If we win this week, is that not our best season ever in terms of points for a season?
Back in the 50s and 60s, there were only 17, 18 rounds. So we're now at 23 rounds. So yeah, 100%. And we've been pretty. We haven't lost twice in a row. We had the draw and a loss, but other than that, we've had a very successful year. And
our losing margin average is, I think, 9 points or something. So,
we lost by 1 point to Adelaide. What was the Collingwood game?
11 or something.
And the Bulldogs was 14 or something.
Yeah, so maybe it's more 11 or something. Yeah. So
it's a pretty successful year. So great.
Successful year.
Well, let's hope we're going to celebrate next week and we'll know a bit more about who we're playing and all the permutations. That'll all be settled. So, look forward to chatting with you guys next week. Go Demons.
Go Redlegs.
Come on, Demons. Come on.